Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. There are actually a lot more ways than you might think to where you can set up your life to legally pay either zero or very minimal amounts of tax. Most people think, hey, I have to go and live in Dubai, and that's just not the case. You can find different countries that will let you go and live there, either part-time or full-time, not have to change your lifestyle that much, and be able to keep a lot more of your own money. So let's start with the first way. This is the most obvious way. It is the zero tax country. Now, these countries aren't always that easy to get residence in because so many people want to live there. So whether it's the UAE, if you want to live in Dubai, whether it's many of the other Gulf countries, Vanuatu, Monaco, these are countries that because they have zero tax, they're often very much in demand. So if you want to go to Monaco, you need to put €500,000 in the bank, and then you need to buy an apartment. Even a studio apartment in the bad part of town in Monaco is going to cost a lot of money. A parking space could cost €500,000. So that's going to be expensive. And that's why I think a lot of people should look beyond the zero tax countries because sure, you could start a company in the UAE and you could go and live in Dubai. Is that really what the average person wants to do if they're coming from the West? Maybe or maybe not. But it's definitely worth considering those zero tax countries. But the reality is, for a lot of people, it's just not going to work. So the second most obvious thing to do is to choose a low tax country. And there are countries that if you spend 6 months a year there, you're going to pay their tax. If you spend less than that, you won't pay their tax. So you can use my trifecta method. You can live in different places at different times of the year, and you can legally not make that your tax home. However, what if you want to spend full time in a country? Low tax for many of us is better than paying 35, 40, 50%. And so countries that I like, Montenegro, Panama, countries like that where the tax rates are low. Bulgaria, if you want to be in Europe, Georgia has relatively low tax. Here's the issue. If you can find a country that has not only low tax, but has no controlled foreign corporation rules, and I talk about that in a separate video. You can find it here on YouTube. If you can do that, then you can actually reduce the rate of tax below the headline tax rate, because what you can do is you can say, hey, I'm going to pay that tax rate on my salary, but if I have extra money in the business that I'm not distributing, kind of retained earnings, I can leave that money in my foreign company, and there's not anything that forces me to bring that money into the country, and so therefore I'm paying 9% on 1/4 of my income, for example, and they'll be happy to have you to do that. So there are plenty of low tax countries around the world. Andorra is another one where you can go and you can buy real estate, you can set up a company, you can pay 10% tax. This to me is going to be something that a lot more people will be doing in the future. Now, the number 3 option is you want to choose a country that has territorial tax. These are the countries that have tax, normal tax rates. Sometimes the tax rates aren't even that low. But they allow you to live there and only pay tax on your foreign or on your local source income. So your foreign source income is going to be completely tax exempt. This is Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Georgia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Thailand. So a lot of concentration in Asia, a lot of concentration in Central America. Basically, if you can get a residence permit, you can live in this country. And as long as, in many cases, not all, but in many cases, you're not bringing that money in, either in the year it was earned or you're not remitting it in general, then you're not going to pay a tax. You leave your money over here. You just bring in what you need to live on. Every country has different procedures. Belize, for example, more in the favor of people who are retired. Philippines has a program for people who are retired starting at 35 years old. These are all territorial tax countries, and some of them have more flexible regimes than others. In Hong Kong, for example, very difficult to get in there without starting a company that would require you to pay tax. So there are some where it just doesn't work that well. Singapore, you'll need millions in order to get in this way. So the Malaysias, the Thailands, the Panamas, those are going to be easier options, but definitely if you can just basically contain your income where you don't need to be earning income in the country where you're living, then you can pay very little tax. The fourth option is something that we don't really deal with a lot here at Nomad Capitalist. This is the non-domiciled status. people often talk about this in the context of the UK, where you're living in a country, but you're not considered domiciled there. And so there are certain restrictions on how you can run your business and what you have to do. But basically, in some cases, you just pay a flat fee, or in some cases, you can pay nothing, but you're not domiciled in the country. Therefore, you're not liable for tax on your global income. So in some ways, some similarities to territorial tax, a more complicated issue for sure. Certainly, in my opinion, I look at going to emerging countries where not only is the cost of living lower, the taxes are lower. For me, not as interesting of an option. For someone who wants to live in a country like the UK, it's a more complicated one that can be worth considering. And the fifth option that really nobody talks about so much anymore, this is more the tax strategy of the ultra-wealthy, which is lump sum taxation. Switzerland is very well known for having lump sum taxation, where they say, we'll just charge you a multiple of what it costs you to live. So, for example, we'll charge you 7 times your annual rent, or the rent that you would be paying if you were renting. And you just pay us that money, and we'll leave you alone. You can make as much money as you want. Other countries have recently rolled out regimes where they'll say, pay us 100,000 euros a year, for example, and we will just let you live here. Whatever you make overseas is not our concern anymore. This is by countries who are looking to bring revenue in from wealthy people, 100,000 euros or 30,000 euros, places like Jersey or Gibraltar. Nobody would really go there probably if it weren't for these approaches. And it's not like you're paying zero, so you need to be making decent money in order to make this make sense. But if you want to live in generally more of a Western European lifestyle, this is where you can just come in and they'll leave you alone. So I think that Switzerland and some of the cantons there have started to phase this out. Switzerland decided not to get rid of it a couple years ago, but certainly there is some pressure because these countries are surrounded by more high tax countries, where the high tax countries are arguing it's going to drain their resources. I'm not sure where this is going in the future, but it's certainly an interesting option to consider. So those are 5 different ways that you can legally pay from 0 to 10% in tax, depending on how much money you make. It's also worth looking into the tax laws in each of the countries that you go to, because as I said, some of them don't have things like CFC rules. Some of them don't have things like other provisions that you might have in your home country, to where it makes the tax policy more friendly, even if the headline tax rate is higher.
I'm Andrew Henderson, and if you're looking for a way to legally reduce your taxes, build your freedom, and create wealth faster as a global citizen, then you've come to the right place. I want you to do 3 things right now. Number 1, click the button to subscribe to our channel. Make sure to get notifications so you never miss a new video. Number 2, get a copy of our #1 best-selling book, Nomad Capitalist, on Amazon, and learn all the dozens of benefits of our lifestyle. And number 3, if you're already a 6 or 7-figure entrepreneur and you want to put these strategies in place, go to nomadcapitalist.com and find out how to get some help.